Away, look up here. This is important. 45 your Chromebooks, if you would, please, so I can have your attention. All right, now you don't have to write it. Okay. On Friday, you have a test. Now, I am not going to be here on the block days. I'm going to be at the state wrestling tournament. And so now, okay. Now, what you need to know. There will be a study guide posted tomorrow for you guys to work from. Now, where are those questions going to come from? No. They're going to come from all the quizzes. Now, I did not assign all of the quizzes, but I'm telling you the test is going to come from the quizzes. Does that make sense? So a majority, I think there's going to be 40 questions on the quiz. 30 of them are going to come from right there. All right. About 5 of them are going to come from the movie we watched, the questions so you have that too. All right. That was the, what did we call that? It's in the Great War right there. Okay. And then there'll be just 5 random questions that, God forbid, you might have to look up on your own. Now, your quizzes are set to where on your final attempt they show you what. But here's the thing: if you haven't noticed, and I'm doubting half of you do, when you go to the quiz, look up here. I'm giving you pearls here. When you go to the quiz, before you ever take it, if you went to in the textbook, actually, I take that back. Okay, I'll actually assign those all. If you go to the textbook, and you go into your assignments in the textbook, it'll show you the quizzes, and you can take them without. I'll actually go ahead and link these. I'll put a link on all the quizzes to where you can find the textbook quiz. And it will show you the correct answers. Okay. I'll do that for this one chapter. I'll need to do that for the hours. You'll have access to them. You'll have access to the right answers. All right. And maybe, God forbid, some of you who don't have them in will actually get them done. Okay. Now, all right, we need to finish up a couple of things. It won't take us long, but now I'm giving you guys a solid. I'm making this test pretty easy because I'm not going to be here for the next 2 days. So, first teacher one day, I don't know who they got for me for the other day. All right, now, ladies, why are we talking? Ladies. All right, now, a couple of things we need to finish going over. Okay. Now. Okay. Okay. Now, real quick. and then I'll turn you guys loose. The prohibition. This is the only time in our country's history where we basically said, let's make something illegal and change the Constitution, make it constitutionally illegal, and then change our mind and change it back 10 years later. No amendment to the Constitution has ever been undone except for the 18th Amendment. Now, and what you need to understand is why it was made this way. Now, the three amendments that you're going to need to know on this test are the 18th, 19th, and 21st. Now, 21st is easy. What do you get to do when you're 21? So that brought alcohol back. The 21st Amendment brought alcohol back. Now, you got the 18th and the 19th. Okay, 18 what? Okay, yeah, 18 made alcohol illegal. What the 19th Amendment? You said it.
What?
Somebody said, I thought you said it. Somebody over there said 19th Amendment was a right for somebody, some group of people, women to vote. You did say that? Oh, somebody over there said, was that you, Mitchell?
No, I'll take credit for it.
Okay.
I said it.
Was it you, Jake?
I guess.
Okay. All right, somebody said vote over there. Now, you need to know that women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. Alcohol was made illegal by the 18th Amendment and then brought back by the 21st Amendment. There you go. Yep. Well, here's what I always remember. Women were the push behind obviously getting the right to vote, but also making alcohol illegal. They got the one they wanted less first, and then got what they wanted second. So now there's a reason why alcohol becomes illegal, and we're going to talk about a lot of racism today. One of the reasons why it became illegal was after the war, a lot of people were really still hating on German people that were here. What's the stereotypical thing that all German people drink? Beer. They wanted to make beer illegal to punish the Germans. So that's one of the reasons why. Now, also, at the same time, you have a big thing happening. In the city, people have more money than they've ever had before. Well, we'll say kind of. Because there's this new thing that lets people buy things all the time, and they don't even have to have the money. What are we going to call it? Credit. Now, you can have a blast on credit. You can run up all kinds of bills. But then what happens when the bills come due? Life sucks, right? Okay, you guys are getting close to college, so let me tell you about a terrible story of what not to do when you get to college. There was a young man who was in Mizzou about 10 years ago. When you get to college, you are going to get it if you actually check your mailbox, because you do all have a mail slot. You will get credit card applications from every credit card company in the world. Once you're 18, throw them away. Make sure if you have one, it's a joint account with your parents, to where they can monitor and slap you when you spend too much money. Because here's what this one genius child did. This one. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Hey, Bella. Come on, Barry. I think you want the lottery. Okay, anyway. What was it you saying? Oh, this kid takes out all these credit cards and he runs them up to unbelievable, maxes them all out. Well, the bills start to come due. What's he do? He applies for more credit cards. And he shifts the balance he pays off the credit cards with other credit cards. Well, here's the bad thing that happens. When you pay off your credit cards, your credit card company is going to think, hey, they're a good investment, so they're going to raise your credit level. That means you can go in debt more. So what this kid did, I think he had 25 credit cards. He just got shipping the payments on, and he did this for 4 years. By the time the credit card companies caught up to him, he was a senior in college and he owed close to $500,000. Yeah, he's in jail. Because you know what that's also called? Fraud. Yeah. You're paying off money that you don't have. And yeah, it was because the credit cards were all happy. They'd see this big bill, but then it would disappear, show up on another credit card company's bill, and it just, I mean, okay, on one hand, you got to give the kid credit because this is genius. But he's in prison. And he probably is no longer able to stand and pee. You draw your own conclusions there. Yeah. Okay. Now, but hey, this is what allows people to party their butts off in the 1920s. They buy everything on credit. Don't have the money to buy a refrigerator? Put it on credit. Don't have the money to buy a car? Put it on credit. Now, and companies are always willing to extend you credit because every time you ask for more credit, what do they do to your interest rate? You know what interest rate is? The amount of money you have to pay back beyond what you borrow. So they're getting more money from you? Yeah. Let's see, if you just pay off your minimum payment, what you owe, add more and more and more. If you take a long enough payment plan, you're going to end up paying that thing 2 to 3 times. When the company's all paying that, they're like, yeah, keep making your minimum payments. We love you. My credit card companies hate my wife because my wife sees the balance sheet and the whole thing. They get no interest. And then they keep sending us letters, hey, you don't really need to pay off your credit card all the time. And my wife's like, go away. That's the good thing about fixing my account. She takes care of me. I get my $20 a week. Okay, now, but you have the people who live in cities spending and spending. Now, one thing they couldn't put on credit was illegal alcohol, but they still managed a way to find it. And then you have people who live in the country. Their life is actually pretty bad because the farm loans weren't working the same way. And in the 1920s, after the war, there were droughts that were starting to happen. Everybody know what drought is, right? Lack of water. If you're a farmer, what's the one thing you need? Water. You need right. Okay. All right, now, let's kick it off. Okay, we go and make alcohol illegal. Why? I don't know. No. Funny story. Has everybody heard of Jack Daniel's, the famous whiskey?
Absolutely.
Guess what company never stopped producing alcohol during the 1920s? Jack Daniel's, because, and this is kind of funny, Jack Daniel's distilleries to this day are in what's known as a dry county in Tennessee. It is illegal to consume alcohol. They have to get a special permit for the guy who goes around and tests the whiskey to make sure that's right. He has to have a special permit to drink in that county. You can produce all the alcohol you want, you just can't sell it. Well, I guess the federal government, being dumb, thought that, well, since they can't, it's a dry county, they're not going to make alcohol there, so they chose to do it, not like the 19th Amendment, the 20th Amendment, 18th Amendment, numbers. And so they never really checked up on it. They were able to produce and ship out all over the country. We weren't so lucky in Anheuser-Busch. Again, because it was beer and did it have a German name, Anheuser-Busch, they were shut down, even though they still made alcohol legally. Okay, now, you get places that just get, first of all, there's two kinds of alcohols in the 1920s. There's the illegal kind that was brought in and produced like alcohol had always been, usually from Canada. Like I said, there were some places that were still illegally made it, but we're getting away with it. And the police would go on raid and take away the alcohol. They'd dump out the beer. Every time you'd see the beer dumped out, you'd always see some idiot down on the ground, like laughing at the sidewalk, trying to get a little beer for free. That just had to make people cry is when they went down and dumped it all in the river. All right, now, one of the places you could go, Chicago, one of the biggest bars, illegal bars that was ever found during Prohibition, the U.S. Post Office had an extra warehouse. And the Postmaster General of Chicago decided he thought that the 18th Amendment was stupid and he was going to allow people to come in and bring alcohol in this big warehouse. So if you were going to the post office, you were going to get drunk. It was kind of a thing. And then if you called in work the next day, you were mailing it in. Have any of you ever heard that statement? I'm mailing this one in. That came from the 1920s where people would get so drunk they couldn't go to work the next day. It was because of the post office. Now, because they were federal employees, nobody ever thought to bother them. If you knew the password, you could come in, and they had it set up to where it looked like there was letters sorted and things, and they had this big, huge thing of boxes that actually they built a room and bar and they just stacked boxes all the way around it, to where if you went to the warehouse, you thought you were just in a warehouse. Now, this is alcohol consumption. This is estimated because we don't know how much illegal alcohol was consumed. But this is when it becomes illegal. You see it right here? Then what happens? It doesn't become legal again until 1933. People are still drinking. Matter of fact, they're drinking more than they had been before it became illegal. Now, we talked about the geniuses who would take isopropyl alcohol, which was completely legal, but not for drinking, it's for wounds, and they would try to turn it into grain alcohol. They would cut the top and bottom off the loaf of bread, pour the isopropyl alcohol through it to change it to grain alcohol, and they would either go blind or die. Then you have what was known as bathtub gin. People would make stills in their bathroom and try to make gin. Now, usually it didn't taste very good, but it still had the desired effect. It got you drunk. Speakeasy, bars, famous ones in Harlem was the Sugar Shop. It was a candy store. If you went back in the back of the store, there was a case that opened up into a back room where it was a big old bar. By the way, a lot of speakeasies in New York were in Harlem because the police were racist and didn't go to the areas where into Harlem to patrol. Okay. Alcohol's brought in. We're talking about that. The one guy we do need to talk about here is Al Capone. Anybody know his nickname? They made an 80s movie about a gangster, Scarface. When he was in New York, he was a New York mafia enforcer. I mean, he was got to go around people, get their pay off the money they owed. Yes, mafia. Well, technically, now don't tell Sicilians this. Sicily's part of Italy. They're all Italian. It's just what part. But when he was actually part of the United States. He was a Sicilian heritage, yes. Now, he becomes Scarface because he gets in a knife fight, gets cut on the face. And now, first of all, you never wanted to call him Scarface. He was very sensitive about it. If you wanted to die, You mentioned the Star. And by the way, this guy becomes like a total media, the first big glitzy star, and he's a killer. One, the public loved him because he was providing the service that they all wanted, alcohol. Two, he could get away with anything. Literally, he would be being interviewed by reporters, and he would say, "Oh, I've never hurt anybody, but if they did this, I would kill somebody." Like he'd say quotes and that, so he could get in trouble for it. He literally beat the guy to death with his bare hands in the lobby of a hotel. And because people were either so afraid of him or thought he was pretty cool, nobody would testify. You know how they finally ended up getting this guy? I mean, he's running prostitution, drugs, alcohol. You know how they got him? They pay his taxes. And even then, they weren't sure to get him. So what they do before the trial starts, because they thought they were pretty sure that he picked off all the jurors, the judge put his foot next to it and said, "We're flip-flopping juries," and they flip-flopped the juries. And then he ends up putting the rest of his life in Alcatraz. But even then, he had like his own personal chef. He made sure he was treated well. All right, now he becomes really famous for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Basically, what Alcatraz was is he was a mobster from New York. New York, they didn't really want him, so he gets kind of kicked out. He actually gets in trouble with all the bosses. He's told, "Leave or die." So he goes to Chicago. The mafia is not as strong in Chicago. He actually is there, able to get there, takes control of the mob, and becomes the kingpin. Actually becomes more powerful than New York. Well, a rival mafia gang tries to move in on Chicago into his territory, and the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is basically on Valentine's Day. They told these guys they're going to meet up and they're going to have discuss who owns what. And the only discussion that happens up is they jump out of the car with machine guns and wipe them all out. So eliminated the competition. And by the way, 7 people died that day. There were like 3 or 4 that died in the hospital, but they didn't count them. All right, and by the end of the 1920s, especially when the Great Depression hit, people are like, "We want beer back. You know, this is stupid." You can see the day the newspaper, the day it became illegal, and the day it comes back. Now, intolerance. There's a bunch of intolerances going on during the 1920s. The first thing, you had the city people hated the country people, and the country people hated the city people. And you're going to say that's kind of stupid. But here you please understand. These people seem to have all the money in the world because they're spending everything on credit. I mean, they're using credit. These people are struggling because farms are being repossessed. There's a drought. Life is rough. They're like party all the time. Remember, you got the flower girls, you got the girls, women who, before World War I, they wore the long dresses. They had to be very take care of their man. Everything's about their husband. Well, during World War I, they got jobs and they got the right to vote. And they're like, "Ooh, life is great." Women in the city start thinking like men in the city, "Hey, it's okay to have a relationship outside of marriage. We can hook up and then it doesn't really mean anything. We can start wearing short dresses, go to bars, hang out." And this is also the jazz age. Now, jazz is a whole other thing because this is a new expression of freedom. Dancing, because you weren't supposed to dance with anybody other than your husband, and then girls start dancing with boys. The wheels are going to come off the wagon. Oh my gosh. And then they got drunk too. And then they'd sleep around. It was crazy. All right, now. But the main intolerance we're going to talk about, and I like to blame Woodrow Wilson for this, because The resurgence in the KKK happened under Woodrow Wilson, and did he care? No, because he is a big fat racist himself. He actually invited Klan members to the White House.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. But please understand, although the Klan was, the Klan was born out of in the Civil War to oppress African Americans, the Klan opens it. They open up racism to everybody. They hated Germans, they hated Irish, they hated Italians. Basically, if you weren't English, now if you've been here for a couple years and you're German, you're okay. But basically, they hated everybody that wasn't like that. Now, look at me and please understand, this is going to be on your test. I'm promising you this is on your test. Look at this picture. What this picture is, you see an immigrant coming off the boat. You see these 4 American rich industrialists, and they're going to stop, go away. But if you look at their shadows, it's the shadows, their own immigrant past. They're not even remembering their own history. Now, one of the people who hated immigration more than anybody, Andrew Carnegie, a guy who was born in Ireland, because he left because of the big famine over there, came over here, became a billionaire, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh no, we need to cut down on immigration. So basically what these people say is, oh, it's okay for me to come here and get mine, but I don't want anybody else taking my stuff, so let's keep everybody out. Okay, these two guys, Sacco and Vanzetti, they're basically, if you've ever seen the original Ghostbusters movies, they're quote ghosts are in the movie. But basically, these guys were charged with murder. Now, they were anarchists. They wanted to overthrow the government, but there's no proof that they'd actually committed a murder. And they were charged, and a lot of belief was anti-Italian sentiment. Basically, they were convicted because they were immigrants. And you see immigration here. Here's everybody who wants to come to America, and they go through a funnel, and they're only 3% from each country can come in. So, okay. Here we go. You see these posters with the Klan ringing the Liberty Bell with a flag across and a picture of George Washington. Are they saying the Klan's all American? I mean, we know they're a bunch of racists, but basically they're trying to make themselves seem like the good guys. That you would be a good citizen if you were part of the Klan. Which is sick, twisted. Okay, there's Stone Mountain where the Klan was born. They would go out and have rallies there. I'm not going to spend much time because of a bunch of religious symbols. Okay, here's the last thing I was talking about. The conflict between the city and the country culminates in the Scopes monkey trial. You guys in biology are taught evolution, right? That we all know from Bailey's ancestors. Huh? I'm insulting you. I know. You're not paying attention. Okay, now, one thing you need to understand about people, when life is tough, religious beliefs tend to get stronger. When people are struggling, they look to spiritual things. Now, in the country, times were tough. Does it make sense that there's these big tent meetings of revivals, all kinds of things? Out in the country, you can hear these not televisions, but basically preachers on TV, on radio all the time, where they're partying up in the city. And basically what happens, this one teacher in Tennessee decides he is going to teach evolution. He read Darwin's book, and he says, we're going to teach this to my students, and he gets fired. He sues to get his job back, and basically he starts a monkey trial and basically puts evolution on trial. Now, You tell me how fair the trial's going to be. Basically, you have people who believe God created the world in 6 days suing people who say, oh, we all came from monkeys. Now, at the beginning of the trial, the judge opens the trial in prayer. He is quoting scripture from the Bible. How fair or impartial judge do you think this is going to be? Not at all. He's not going to be fair at all. And the trial brings these two lawyers, two great American lawyers, William Jennings Bryan, who defends the Christian values, and you got Clarence Darrow, who was an atheist. Now, the funny thing was, is these two guys are really good friends. And they had to compete against each other. And then you get things like basically anti-evolution, basically, we're trying to keep hell out of our schools. And basically, long story short, the teacher remains fired, and however, the creationists have to admit that they can't prove that God created the universe in 6 days. So, now I will tell you this little update on the story. The evolutionists are actually having a hard time because since we know about DNA now, Darwin has been proven wrong. You can't evolve. DNA only predicts DNA of its exact same thing. So it's interesting because although they'll never tell you some textbooks, they have to read textbooks, but science always knows everything until they don't. They realize they don't know everything, and they figure out what the new solution is. So, guys, you got to remember from a historical standpoint. At one point, did we think that the Earth was the center of the universe? And we thought the sun was the center of the universe. And we thought our galaxy was the center of the universe. And then we realized we're just kind of a little part of this big massive thing. It happens in space all the time. We realize we're wrong, and then we figured it out. Okay. All right, you're free. Yeah. Have a nice meeting. So what do you have on Friday, Lily? Good girl, Lily. Your study guide, hey, your study guide will be in Canvas tomorrow. Really? You're killing me, Smalls.